Yeah. Um, I've often and long wrestled with the notion of a complete cessation of the sense of personal self. You may have seen that conversation I had with Adyashanti and Susanne Marie
Hmm.
about that about 10 years ago. And, because, I mean, take Adya, for example. Okay, so he was in a lot of pain for a long time and he finally retired. And for whatever reason, he was having a lot of anxiety and took some medication for it. And he admitted that publicly, which I really respected. And, so it seems when you hear that kind of stuff, that sounds like it's happening to someone who has some kind of sense of self. It's not happening to a tree outside. It's happening to
Hmm.
this guy, Adya, and if I come into the room where you are and I say, hey, Kogen,
Hmm.
you'll turn your head. Uh, you know, so I've never quite grokked the idea of complete cessation of a sense of personal self. It seems more like you can say, yeah, I'm the ocean, but I'm also this wave, as I've always been. But now I realize I'm much more than this wave. I'm the whole ocean. And, to shift out of that analogy, I mean, we're an instrument experiencing the totality and but and we are that totality and we know ourselves to be that, but we're still this instrument. And Vedanta deals with it with a concept they call leisha, vidya, which means faint remains of ignorance, where there's got to be some remnant of a sense of ignorance or individuality if you're going to function as a living human being. What do you think about
Yeah,
all
I mean,
that?
I would say that the difference is primarily experiential, right? It's simply the sense of there being a separate existence can be very, very subtle. In, let's say, as you mentioned, there is I'm just the wave, right? Then there's I'm the ocean, right? And then I can see I'm both ocean and I'm both wave at the same time. So I would say the experiential sort of difference that kind of happens there is that then it feels there is an ocean, there is a wave, but there is not that flavor that almost, let's say like you have an ice cream that is strawberry flavor, right? It's almost like experience can have a flavor of my experience, right, in some form, whether I'm totality or I'm an individual, I'm both at the same time and can see all the spectrums. And all I'm saying is that flavor of me, it's my experience, can also drop away from it. It doesn't mean that, let's say, someone comes to the room and says like Kogen, that there's no differentiating between that. It's simply that the sound that is arising that says Kogen has absolutely no one attached to it that could be in a relationship to that experience, and turning of the head also doesn't have that flavor. It's simply on an experiential level. And again, I think it's a very important point about us having nervous system, and that even deep realization, it's not giving us free out of jail card sort of pass from all sorts of difficulties and grief and pain and discomfort. It's just that there's just something experientially that happens when that drops away, that there is no sense that refers back to anything. It's simply arising, and each of those experiences can arise: experience of being cold, experience of having preference for this food over that food that is arising, and yet there is just that little experiential difference of either it's arising to someone who is either aware of the different spectrums of being, and yet it has that kind of subtle you know reference point back to some subject to whom the life happens, or that can be relinquished, and therefore, even though it doesn't necessarily stands with disagreement with the point you made about some remains of vas, or some remaining conditioning that needs to happen for the functionality to be there. It's perfectly fine. It's just the flavor of personal experience, of like, this is my experience, whether I'm God, whether I'm ocean, whether I'm everything. If there is like this movement of it's referring back to that me, it's still, it still has simply that flavor of someone collecting the experience, traveling the timeline, going through life. And when that drops, there's some sense of freedom from that project altogether, which is hard to put into words. That's the best what I can do here.